excused absence. Something's wrong.
Dan. I was looking for tissues.
Oh. I didn't do one. I'll get one for you in a minute. He's not going to be here.
You've got a little.
Huh?
He's not going to be here.
Oh, okay, I guess we'll bring the meeting to order, even though that we are 9 hours and 2 minutes late, considering the agenda says we're starting at 12 a.m.
I did it.
We'll bring the meeting to order.
Thank you.
All presents, let's just do a roll call because we don't have, Dan,
Sorry
would you
about that.
start down there?
What's that?
Roll call. Dan Hughes.
Dan Hughes.
Lori Volk.
I'm not sure.
Scott Safford.
Jane Plummer.
Matterholt.
Tim Smith.
And, go ahead.
Jason Green, Community Development.
And our chair, Megan Held, is on excused absence. If you all will stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Standing, please. We gather to make decisions for our community. May we only use our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider all the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Okay, we first need to start with the approval of the minutes. Is there any corrections or changes that needed to be made? Did you have a correction, Dan?
I have some comments, but they don't deal with the verbiage in the minutes. But
Okay.
there's some follow-up issues here that I wanted to inquire about at the
Okay.
appropriate time.
Okay. So anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
But just note that our agenda says this meeting is to start at 12 a.m., which is midnight.
Well, I said that in the opening, we're 9 hours and 2 minutes late, but that's all right. I'm glad people realized that that was incorrect.
You can always be
Right.
late, you can't be early.
That's true. Okay, so, we are opening the public hearing.
Yeah, if you want to, you can open it, but we'll have an announcement that we can get to if you want to just announce that we're going to.
Okay,
Basically, let me start now. The applicant and the town have agreed, he's asked for a continuance of approximately 2 months.
okay,
We'll formalize that date and re-notify people within the 500-foot area that's required. And at that time, once we confirm when that date is. But the plan is for October.
so we don't have to have a date certain here at this meeting?
No, you don't have to have a date certain.
Okay,
Because again, we'll also send notices when we have that date finalized.
So that makes this, all right. Then we move to,
Well, could I have
can we
some,
ask,
I have some question that, in the notice to the property owners of this meeting, though, I think we should take a look at that, if you have that in front of you. Even, this is going to be continued, right?
We will renotice and
Right.
set another hearing date.
Well, the notice says it's seeking to extend the approval of the adopted master concert plan and amend the existing MCP. There is no existing MCP. It's been vacated.
There's,
And then it says to include lodging, but is it, as I went through this material, it's apparent also that the CPD itself would need amendment.
these are some of the issues that we'll be discussing and dealing with the applicant on.
I'm sorry?
These are some of the issues that we'll be addressing with the applicant and working between the two, the
Well,
town and the applicant.
shouldn't the notice say that the CPD is being amended, not the MCP as well? I mean, the MCP is not being amended. They're seeking a new one, and the CPD would be amended.
Well, actually, the application included amending or extending the existing MCP. So those are items that have to be addressed and cleared up between now and the next hearing date.
I realize that.
And
I'm
the
just
notice will.
pointing out that the
Yes.
notice, I think, doesn't clearly reflect what's going on.
The notice will hopefully reflect what gets corrected and revised between now and the next hearing date.
Right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
is there anybody else that had a question that they wanted to bring forward at this time on that? Okay. So administrative agenda.
Okay, thank you. Basically, all I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to approve topics for discussion in the joint meeting. We'll also have this list on the council's MMP meeting, which is on Thursday. And if you wanted to switch things or had recommendations for switching, but basically, I think you have the list in front of you, don't you? On the yellow sheet? There's no yellow sheet?
No.
I wonder how that got. Well, hold on. Okay, so one of the things that we're gonna bring to you is some draft language for the height that we discussed of buildings. That's probably the main primary issue as far as that goes. And then also, we wanted to offer you an opportunity to suggest any other topics of discussion that you want to look at. So we have gone back through what we've discussed over the last few months. And so things like the EC zoning district and those things you've already chimed in on. So we were going to move that forward and not include that on the joint meeting. But height seemed to be one of the biggest topics as far as that last joint meeting that we had. So we've drafted some language on that to work on and give to you guys as far as discussion. Was there other topics of discussion that you wanted to prioritize for the joint meeting?
I think also one of the big topics was not only the height, but the width.
Right, setbacks related to how those two interact with each other, and are they, related to each other? That's the first thing, but yes, what happens with setbacks, what happens with height, how do they work together? Yes.
I spoke with Anita Saracito last night, and because I didn't get a chance to really review, I've been on vacation, the hearing from the town council last, the 5th, and something that was brought up and questioned during that meeting was properties that have liens on them that are for sale, and what the situation is in handling the lien and moving forward. First of all, it has to be a cash sale, and second of all, the town will not negotiate with the owners of purchasing the property in closing out the lien, so that at least this is how it was told to me when I was representing a person who had a lien on their property, and they had a purchaser, that they had to solve the lien before it could be sold, or the buyer had to assume the lien and no negotiations would happen with the new purchaser. So I think this is something that we are going to anticipate an awful lot in the future because there's so many properties that have liens on them at this time. And one of the things was that possibly we need to look at changing how the town handles, not being able to deal with the new purchaser over a property that needs to be sold so that it doesn't get in worse position. So Roger, I guess, was asked how to handle that, and nobody knew really how to answer that question, but somebody answered it for me when I had the property for sale, and so I know there is an answer, but maybe it's because our town isn't, our ordinance says that they can't negotiate, and so maybe we need to change that, or look at how to change that, because, agree with that? Would you like to
It's gonna be a
discuss it?
problem,
Yeah, it is going to be a problem, and if, there's some huge numbers out there on some of these properties, making them totally upside down. And I mean, at the last hearing I was at, there was a guy that came in and said, I'll give you my deed because I can't do this.
So my advice to you is to steer you back to what is under your umbrella, so to speak, of the LPA. Not to dismiss that point, but frankly, the liens are not part of your charge as the LPA, and code enforcement is not. So if it's a code related, if it's things that are being charged because you think the code should be changed, and maybe it's unfair in your opinion, then I think those are discussions that we would like to have more specifically. But my advice to you is it really has nothing to do with the LPA role. But if you want to bring it up and ask the council to discuss that, that's obviously up to you as a committee.
I just think that it's a major issue, and it's going to get worse because there's so many properties with liens, and
So our goal of the joint meeting, and I got a couple of other items here to suggest to you also, is things specific to your role as the LPA, which is Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code primarily. Obviously, historic preservation's under that umbrella too. So those are the things, that's why we try to address setbacks and height as a primary issue since it was brought up before. And two of the other items, just to kind of get your thoughts going, is the minimum use determinations. The MUD, I don't know if you've heard that term. That is, it's different than a lot of other places, and staff has probably struggled a little bit with it because of the quirkiness of it. You've seen some variance requests and deviations for different things because of the way it works and the timelines that are set forth in that. Just as a refresher, that deals with minimum lot size based on certain dates. I'm just going to throw a date out there, such as, if it's below 7,500 square feet, it has to have been a lot prior to 1962 or something like that. So those kinds of issues that we've been dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we would like to bring some information forward for the joint meeting to discuss that. And then administrative approvals, which I think we've discussed before. We've had some draft language that we've been playing with to see what works and researching other communities and seeing what they do. And there's a full spectrum of ways that other communities approach this, but so that makes up the three issues that we were thinking. Height was obviously a primary one because we've specifically talked about bringing that back. And then these other two were ones that we were thinking about. So I don't know where they are on your radar, but those are the three top for us.
I think they're all important, but one other question. Have you been having a lot of issues with people being able to, with the ratios that are provided for land and pool and driveway and, coverage? Is that also going to be encompassed in this? Because I've heard a lot of people aren't being able to, widen their driveways or do patios because their house and their pool covers too much.
With the 67% you're referring to? Other than people don't like it and don't want to abide by it.
Well,
No,
I mean, they?
Is it a problem for us? No, it's a
I know,
fight
but I
every
mean,
day to
is it
remind us.
something that you're having to address every time? Maybe the number is incorrect at 67%.
Well, I don't know what, okay, so a discussion about that percentage is, or as a conversation point, yes.
Yes.
For us, no, we haven't, because I don't know that there's a magic number. 67 has been set based on some findings. No, for us, the fight is, or not the fight, I shouldn't say that, the discussion is reminding people that they're in asking for that information and getting that information. So whatever the number is,
But what if they I mean, how?
if the
you-
number is 70, we're still going to have that, it's still going to be the hour-long conversation that we have to have with everybody. So it doesn't matter what the number is. And the biggest challenges we have is getting people to realize you can't just pave your entire property. So I would really say it swings one extreme more than the other. A majority of the people understand that they want grass, they want some area that's not paved, and that's their desire too, so we don't really have a problem. It's not a majority. I wouldn't put it at a majority.
Is it worth discussing? I mean, are there lots of people coming in for adding a pool and they can't have a pool because they have a driveway?
No, I think those are different conversations. I think the percentage is one conversation. The ability to provide the drainage that's required is overlapping, but a different conversation. And then how much stuff people want on their property is kind of a third conversation. They work together, but they really are separate conversations with people. The issue, to put it this way, people that don't even approach that 67% are still having issues with drainage. People that put in drainage can put in their drainage, but that are butting up against that 67%. So they're not always together. They're not always the same issue. And frankly, the drainage is, for the most part, gets you close to that other 33%. I mean, there's a natural, if you do what I would call surface drainage, then you're going to be pretty close to having to meet that other 33% to keep you below that 67 generally anyway. It's very unusual to be able to meet the drainage and have less than 33% of that open space.
Anybody else have anything else you'd like to see on the joint meeting?
Are we going to,
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
got a
Scott.
couple things. Are we going to revisit the vacation and right-of-ways?
You mean the specific issues or the overall discussion of that?
Overall discussion in moving it forward?
Right, so we are working with a couple property owners that have gone to their neighbors, gotten some interest and discussion from them, signatures from them of interest in moving forward with reviewing how to go about that, how do we do it on a canal-wide basis, not an individual basis. Right now, a couple people are out of town, property owners, so they're back in town, I believe now, we're working towards that. We're also trying to gather information about cost, so that's really, because if it's going to be done together, we need to kind of set what is that estimated cost so that they can know what that cost is going to be per lot, and then move forward that way.
I think that's really, really important because there's like how many streets that have issues on every single property.
Well, so the Denora one's the only one that's come forward right now, and there's 2 sections to Denora, and then that'll be a discussion topic later on, which is it 2 individual projects? Is it one? Do you merge them together for hopefully efficiency? I mean, there's some things that we have to review.
I would say almost every house, other than maybe the bayfronts, between Denora and Connecticut that are waterfront have property that has been filled in and the seawalls were put in and then it was filled in and then there's anywhere from a foot to 5 feet. I think that's ridiculous that we're not addressing that and getting that solved because, those things come back to bite the prior owner and the prior owner, and because they got permits and now the next person comes in and then they can't get permits and they get stuck with, well, you have to vacate this. Well, why didn't the other people? Well, because nobody saw it.
Right, council's
Well,
direction.
it was discussed at length at our last meeting with the town council, and I don't know how, what has happened to it since then. I'm
No,
not clear.
the council direction was to, as a by canal, not individual lot owners,
Yeah.
is to evaluate and consider how do we go about this, and that's what we're doing. We're working with a property owner that's led the charge for his street, and trying to get some costs associated. You got to have surveying costs, you got to have as-built and legal descriptions prepared. There's public hearings that have to be done and presentations. So yeah, we're trying to put together kind of that packet, so to speak, of what all that's going to estimated cost, and then move forward with a decision based on that. If it's financial hardship to do that, then somebody has to make a decision whether to move forward or not. But yes, the process is really a pilot project, is using that Denora as an example of how do we go about and what does this end up looking like and does it work? So that's what we're doing now.
I think that the town should come up with something much more simpler. It wasn't something that each individual lot owner did, and probably the lot owners that purchased the property as raw land are still not the property owners that live in it now. I think that the town should be able to go, boom, if the land's there, it's yours. I mean, it's
Well,
not like
By state
they're
law,
gonna
we
put a
can't, but the process to determine how much, because each individual property is different, has to be done. So the cost of that and the process of that is being worked on with those property owners. That was the direction given.
But there was also an issue as if, in fact, that area is vacated that we're referring to. Does the title devolve to the adjacent property owner, or does it devolve to the heirs of the developer? That was a legal issue that I raised, because when a developer plats an area and he lays out a lot, what he doesn't lay out is still his property. And we're assuming all along that the town owns that.
So in the cases where the canal is clearly to the public, then I think in those
Yeah.
cases, obviously, it's much more clear. I think to your
Right.
point, if there's questions about that, or if, there may be a couple canals that there's questions about that, which I don't think Denora is one of them from what I've seen, but yeah, that'll be a secondary part to that legal issue. So right now, I think Denora is a little bit more simpler, other than there's no consistency. If everything was offset 5 feet or 3 feet, then it would be pretty simple to do. But the surveyors, each lot is going to require a separate legal description, or each piece, because the lines are not parallel. They don't make a simple, easy, the rear 3 feet of lot, whatever. The descriptions are complicated. The survey is complicated. It's time, money. That's what we're working on.
it'd be that difficult, but
I have a question on 4. LDC amendments. Would you elaborate on that?
I'm sorry, on which one?
On the 4th item, EC zoning and LDC amendments. What amendments are those that we're referring to there?
So, there's the 3 issues. I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, the elevated pools is one of the things that we're working on.
Okay.
And EC amendments, those are things that are going to be going before, you already talked about the pools. I think you gave your input on that in June. That's moving forward with the council. Those 2 issues. The EC zoning district changes and the environmental uses, making sure that it's clear in the EC what you can and can't do by special exception or permitted use. That and the elevated pools will be moving forward to the council. The other items, as far as for, like we talked about, we had height of buildings and setbacks, the MUD, or minimum use determination, and administrative approvals. Those are the 3. We're trying not to bog down that joint meeting, because we want to get the discussion, get your input, get a direction, and move forward. And I think we found once you get more than 3 or 4 issues, it can be a very long meeting. And that is September 5th, I believe it was scheduled for.
10:30
hour?
or something.
Yes, the time I think is still unconfirmed, but it'll
It
be
was in
somewhere
the,
around
it was
there.
in the email that Michelle sent out of council meetings. It says Thursday, September 5th at 9 a.m. Oh, wait a minute, September.
I believe that was the original schedule. There was a conversation about another group coming in before you and then bumping you a little bit later, and it would give you an opportunity to hear some of that feedback from that. I think it was a realtors group or something. I don't know that that's being set. So basically, I think the goal is to slide you up. If they're not coming
There's a
in,
9 o'clock meeting already on here. It says 9 o'clock a.m. management and planning.
correct. The council will have their normal
Oh.
management and planning meeting at 9 a.m. I think the thought was originally if there was a realtors group that was interested in coming in and talking to the council, they would go next, and then we'd have your joint meeting after that.
Who is?
If they're
what-
not coming in, then you would slide in after the,
What is the Realtor group? I haven't heard
I have
anything
no
about
idea.
it. You don't know who's leading it or who's bringing it in?
Nope.
10:30 then, Jason?
As far as I know, it's 10:30.
Okay.
I think it was talked about sliding it back to 11 to allow time, but we'll get that final time for you.
At that joint meeting, is it possible to have council just briefly mention the challenge we've had recently about whether an application is complete or not? I know the staff was frustrated. We were a little bit frustrated on a recent case before us, and it creates a dynamic where there's sort of an arbitrary definition of complete, putting you guys at a disadvantage, putting the LPA at a disadvantage. So if we could at least get some direction from either council or from the town council as to how they look at applications, because, obviously, folks who hire an attorney, those applications are usually look a little different. We don't want to force people to have to hire an attorney to apply for a variance or before the town. So, I just think that, again, it'd be great to get some direction from the town council as to how they view whether an application is complete or not, or what we should do procedurally going forward to make that determination, because we spent a couple hours on a case that was then later deemed not to be complete. The fair criticism, it really wasn't a very complete application, but it creates a challenge for everyone involved unless we all have an agreed sort of process on this. And I thought that might be worth talking about for a couple of minutes just to save time in the future.
Sure, and that's a great discussion point because, as you mentioned, we work with applicants. We sit down with them and try to give them examples of other projects, tell them, show them where the code is, what the questions are, encourage them, beg them to do complete applications. That's their presentation, right? That's the first initial thing that people look at is the application. So that's their request. That's the first step of trying to be clear and concise about what they want and their argument, why they should be able to get it. So yes, we agree with that. I don't know if there's a definition for it, but
Our legal counsel could give us at least something for everyone to think about. Then we could all sort of get on the same page, possibly.
and to that point, we've had people fill out every single question and respond to every single criteria. It wasn't very good, but they responded. Is that a complete application? I don't know. Maybe that's when you get into the judging part, the review part versus the completeness. But yes, historically the town has kind of wrapped up that completeness with commentary, I guess. The evaluation of the request also gets tied in with the completeness part. Never really a hard, you're not complete. Because again, some of that's a judgment and we don't want to do that prematurely, I guess. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear that conversation.
Any other comments for the joint meeting? All right.
So those 4 items, those are good then as far as the height, the mud, the administrative approval, and I'll see about adding on that 4th discussion point about just a discussion about completeness and what the town's looking for.
We can pull recessing for the Historical Preservation Board. There's no update, correct, Scott?
That's correct. We did not mean.
So we can move on to LPA members. Dan?
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to ask staff for sort of a follow-up on a couple of things. One is that the roof over the dock thing, you were going to check as to whether or not that person could put a canopy instead of a fixed roof and would solve his problem. Has that been resolved?
Well, there are 2 different things, right? The interpretation of whether the canopy can be done, I have not addressed that. The other, as far as the request that was before you, is being moved forward to the council on the 19th. On the 19th. So next week they should hear that. As far as the hard roof.
Going before the council, you say on that?
Yes, the application that was before you is the next step is to go.
That's just on the issue that was presented to us, which
Correct.
we denied because he. So
Correct. So the other issue is obviously a separate discussion point, but there's a section of the code that talks about the canopies have to meet building codes. I think that's one of the things that we have to work with the building department and work through to see if that's a necessary requirement. If there's if there even is covered by the building code. And then what kind of edits do we want to do to the language? And some of that was proposed, I don't know, a year ago, I think, over a year ago when we were trying to edit that section of the dock and shore section, and that stuff got pushed. So we can revisit the language in that, but I don't have an answer for you yet as far as clarity on building code versus land development code versus do we want those canopies?
We've got a lot of them all over the town, and you know, it seems like that the canopy's okay, but
Sure.
if it's a solid roof, it's not. It doesn't, there's something that doesn't seem quite right.
Right,
there.
there's some funky language in the code that requires, I think, the canopies to be held to a higher standard that probably, I don't know, but from
Yeah.
my understanding, they probably can't meet. So that's kind of the hang up on that is, do we got to remove that language, I think is probably the key part for that.
Okay. My other inquiry was also just curiosity as to on the leaky tiki case, which we approved, but then it went to the town council, and the town council apparently didn't act on it. They said it was in a, you know, they had procedural reasons, and didn't either accept or deny our recommendation. So what happened then with tiki leaky or leaky tiki?
Okay. Yeah, they're working on their application, is my understanding.
So they're going through a whole new application?
I assume they're revising or
Yeah.
amending and providing supplement to their application as needed.
You concur in the position of the town council that was required, and that they couldn't act on the application that they presented?
I think it's a valid discussion if the town council decides that it is, yes.
Good democratic answer. Lori?
Nothing today.
Scott?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Tim.
Nothing for me.
Question, are you going to address the request to change the LPA date in September?
Yep.
Okay,
We'll get to that.
I don't have anything, thank you.
I just had a couple things. I wanted to just comment on the street performers. Has anything happened with whether are they still going to reduce the number? And
The request will be to set a number based on layout, yes. That's going to go before the council for a second reading.
and when is that?
The 19th, I believe.
And is it still to reduce the number that is currently?
It's to set a number. I honestly don't remember how many they've issued in the past. And again, it depends on which layout they pick. There's, depending on how you do the fire lane protection, keeping 20, allowing 15 people will move kind of discussion. That has not been finalized. But I think there's pretty good consensus on the rest of the language. Seems like-
I've had a lot of people comment that they find it strange that the town wants to reduce or deny some of the street performers, because I think that they think that, you know, we talked about being a family island. We don't have a public park anymore since it was taken out of Lynn Hall. And, you know, we do have the school, but the school has to be either on vacation or out of school to go to the park there. And so, you know, if it doesn't relate to alcohol on this island, the street performers were something that children could really enjoy and other people could enjoy, and it was a fascination and it brought business to the town and kept the Times Square alive. I am very opposed to having the street performers reduced or denied, but that's just my personal comment.
And not to disagree with you, but I wouldn't characterize it as reducing. I think it's trying to establish a defined space so it's clear from enforcement perspective, from public safety perspective, trying to get that cleaned up. And there's ample opportunity for multiple groups to coordinate amongst themselves at which times work best for them and to ultimately occupy the same space. So, I don't know that, again, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but if it was 16 in the past, then there's, if there ends up being 12 spaces and 2 groups per space, that's 24 opportunities. They can coordinate amongst themselves for that. And don't forget, we're going through a process now to reimagine Times Square. So there's going to be ample opportunity to just have that incorporated into that. And this is going to change, right? Times Square is going to change ultimately. So we'll have to revisit this again a couple years down the road. But for right now, I think it's just a way to reorganize it so that it's easier for us to enforce. But there should be enough spaces if people wanted to get together and coordinate on those times.
Okay, so it's your turn, since we don't have an attorney here for attorney
Yep.
items.
Obviously, we knew about the continuance yesterday, so we saved the trip. It was late, but I apologize for not letting you know earlier. The question about September and October is about the meetings. So because of Labor Day, the council meeting is bumped to the second Monday, which then would put your back-to-back meetings. And then also the same with similarly to October, the first meeting in October is on the 7th, which puts the second Tuesday, your normal meeting, the day after the council meeting. So the proposed or request, and I don't have confirmation from the attorney yet whether his availability, we're working on that, his schedule. But if you're able to, are you able to move one or both of those meetings 1 week? So that would be from September 10th to the 17th and October 8th to the 15th in order to avoid the back-to-back meetings. It just makes it extremely challenging for us from agenda preparation and staff reports and that sort of thing. Now, if there's already set dates or whatever trips or things that you guys have going on, that's fine. We can try to work around it, but at least on one of those, we would like to have your consideration for that.
So you're looking for to move the September meeting, this is the September meeting, the October meeting to the 15th?
It's both. So if the attorney can also comply with it, would you be able to do September 17th instead of the 10th and October 15th instead of the 8th? And I mentioned this last meeting too, the September meeting is also partly because that week is also the state of Florida's APA, American Planning Association of Florida's conference. And I'm the chair of our local section, so I have to attend that. I'm on the state executive committee. I won't be here, not that the staff can't move forward with something else that comes up. But that was another reason why for that change in September. The October one obviously is to avoid the back-to-back. I don't have confirmation from the attorney yet. He's working on that schedule, but if he's able to, would you also be able to accommodate those changes? Or one of them, whichever is good for you.
September 17th, does anybody have an issue with that?
I do,
You
Okay.
do?
yeah.
Tim has an issue. I get back on the 16th from a wedding, and so I can read my package that night if it's not huge.
Ask for an excuse absent on the 10th, but if they move it to the 17th, I could attend, so that actually helps.
So Jim would not be able to attend the 10th, Tim not the 17th, that we don't know anything about. Megan, no other issues with you guys for either dates in September?
I can do both.
I'm okay.
Okay, then October, anybody have any issues with the regular date of the 8th? And the 15th?
Going on here?
We're vibrating.
Is that my phone?
It must be. Anybody have any problems with the 15th of October?
No conflict now.
So let us know. We should be able to have a quorum.
Okay. And I think Megan had a conflict with a September date, but I'll double check that. So Tim could not be on the 17th, right?
Jim on the
And
10th.
Jim could not be on the 10th.
So it's, where are we now?
We don't know. We're going to be told later, but we're giving them whether we can attend both dates.
I should know in the next day or so.
Tentatively, the extended dates again are the 17th in September and the 15th in
Right,
October.
if the attorney can accommodate, then we would do the 17th of September and the 15th of October,
And you will let us know as soon as you know?
as soon as I know,
Okay.
within seconds, I hope.
We
I know,
can't wait.
it's hard to juggle all this, I understand, but
Yeah.
The
Okay.
intensity of doing all of the agenda stuff the same week for both meetings it's pretty hard on us.
You have any other items that you need to discuss?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, items for the next month's agenda?
Things are in flux. We'll see what applications come before you with their completeness and,
How many do you think might be on it? I'm just concerned because I'm not going to be
2.
back. If we don't have, do you think that we'll have the,
let me put it this way. We will know what's on the agenda a couple weeks ahead.
will we have our packages by Monday of the week before? Because then I could, have time to read it really well.
If we end up moving the date, yes, probably by that Tuesday, week before. But if it's the same week, then
Okay.
Thursday. So we are going to internally work on cutting some people off, I guess, and cutting the process off a little bit earlier instead of we're trying to be helpful.
It would be
Sometimes
helpful
gets
for us to
more,
have the packages a week in advance.
well, and it gets us into more
It
trouble
would.
being more helpful sometimes. So to try to get things onto a predetermined date that somebody has to have, because it is a 30-day delay, and we don't want to do that to people. But without all the information, sometimes that has to happen. So we'll know further in advance, and I'll inform all of you if there's nothing major on the agenda for September for some reason.
I didn't look before I came today, but before I left for vacation, the magistrate hearing meeting minutes were not very There were several months missing. Have those been updated, or do you know?
I don't know. I haven't checked.
Could you?
but I
Who
can check
does
on
those minutes?
it. Honestly, I don't know. I assume it's the same person that does the other minutes for the town. But as far as getting them approved and posted, I'll check on what that schedule is.
They don't always answer. They don't always put a end result for each case, whether they're being continued or anything. So
Okay.
you just don't know what they are. That would make it simpler for people to figure out what's happening. Because people call me and I tell them, they have to call the town because there's no way to look because there's
Okay. That's, yeah, fair. I'll find out.
public comment. Anybody have anything for come on, you guys came. Don't you want to speak? We're so excited to have you in here. For our, please, come up here. Oh, you have to.
Yeah,
To be on the record, you have to state your name and to be on the record.
My name is Paul Grinold. I own Grinold Maintenance on the Beach. I'm representing the McDonald's at 120 Tropical Shores. They asked me to come to this meeting. I haven't really heard anything about it.
Right.
But I just wanted to agree with you about the street performers. It's not alcohol related. They're very inquisitive. I think it's just great. Stop taking the charm out of this beach. My God, condomania. I don't know. I've just been here a long time and I'm disappointed.
Question on the 120 Tropical Shores, were you here to be concerned about what's happening with ownership of that canal? I know there's some strange
Well,
things happening there.
the owners told me it was about the tops thing.
Oh, well, it was supposed to be about the tops. thing,
Yeah.
And it got continued.
Yeah, so that's continued. But I did hear that, but I figured I'd stick around and listen to you guys a little bit.
Okay.
But street performers, listen to her. Stop taking the charm out of this beach. My
I
goodness
agree.
gracious.
We don't have anything to do with it. I'm just bringing that up as my comment.
Bring it up.
Thanks. I wrote a letter. Thanks. Anybody else? Well, then I guess we can move to adjourn if someone would like to.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned at 9:44. That was a fast meeting, like it. But we didn't
9.5 hour meeting. That was it, right?
What?
9.5 hour meeting. We're good, right?
That's right.
Thank you.